The next morning, Ayla was admiring the flowers in the greenhouse with her maids. Lisa had suggested they take a walk, as it seemed too much to stay inside. But since it was quite cold, she didn't want to go out, so she ended up drinking tea surrounded by flowers in the glass greenhouse on the balcony. "So you were washing dishes together until so late? Lisa, you too?" At Lisa's words, Ayla opened her mouth with an expression of slight surprise. "I already knew that Laura had been called the night before to go through the mountain of dishes, but I had no idea Lisa was there." "Yeah. We're all going through this together, so I can't relax," Lisa responded with a shy smile. After all, she was a noble and daughter of the benefactor who had helped her find Ayla, so there was an atmosphere of respect and consideration towards her among the employees. So last night, Lisa wasn't called and it was an exception, but she went to the kitchen to find something to do by herself. "Still, it's rare that I have the opportunity to rest early, but I'm not resting enough." "Hey, no. I'm not that tired." While Ayla and Lisa were chatting amicably, Laura was glaring at her, as if she couldn't stand her anger. She seemed jealous that Lisa seemed to be getting special treatment, and she also seemed to hate seeing her pretending to be nice on her own. "Lisa doesn't pretend to be nice, he is really kind. He thinks everyone else is as hypocritical as me." Ayla snorted and put a cookie in her mouth, feeling like she could read through Laura's mind. The candy melted gently in his mouth, giving it an even more delicious taste than usual. It was thanks to the deep sleep he had had for the first time in a long time since he learned that his uncle, Isidore, was an expert in curses. It was while Ayla was enjoying her snack. "Excuse me, miss." The Duke's butler, Lester, spoke to Ayla. "Yes, what's wrong?" "The room I lived in as a child is still there. Would you like to take a look?" The tone was calm and polite, just as usual, but somehow, there seemed to be a hint of desperation in the question. "Are you referring to my room when I was little?" Ayla asked, her eyes wide and a hint of surprise. Of course she wasn't really surprised. Lester had made the same suggestion in his past life. Surprised and unsure, Ayla nodded absently and looked around the room, not realizing it was the one she had used as a baby. "Yeah. I don't know if she remembers anything, since she was so little, but I thought it would be nice to visit her anyway." "Really?" Since he hadn't even started formal etiquette and successor classes, he had nothing to do, and he was also curious to know what his room was like when he was young. Although he said he had seen her before returning, a lot of time had passed and his memory had faded. At this time, Ayla visited her without knowing anything, so she just looked at her while observing the butler's expression, leaving only regret. While Ayla got up from her seat as if to follow the butler, he, unable to hide his joy, led her to the room she had used as a child. "This way, miss." Lester politely opened the door. He entered the room with a slightly trembling heart. Laura tried to follow her, but Lisa grabbed her arm and stopped her, looking at her with an expression that suggested she should leave her alone. A look of discontent crossed Laura's face for a moment, but thanks to her, Ayla was able to freely explore her childhood room without worrying about Laura's reaction. The room, where a crib, mobile, and cute stuffed animals greeted her, was spotless, as if it had recently been meticulously cleaned. If it weren't for the faded furniture, he doesn't think he would have been able to feel any trace of time. "I don't remember anything." Ayla looked around frantically, trying to think of something, but nothing came to mind. It was natural. There was no way I could have memories of the time when I was learning to walk. But, although I couldn't remember anything, I felt a strange affection. Although the furniture and structure of his younger brother Noah's room were not much different, this room somehow felt as if even the air flowing through it was filled with a sweet longing. As he looked around the room, feeling a strange tingling sensation, he stopped when he found something that caught his attention. Surely not this. His name and date were engraved on the wooden pillar. There were traces of his height being measured every few months, starting around when he was 1 year old. Was I that little? With her ridiculously short stature, which seemed less than half her current height, Ayla felt a strange sense of loneliness overcome her. How heartbreaking it is that she, who was so little, never returned to this room even once until she grew so big. Who gave it to me? Mother? Father? Or the nanny whose family was massacred by Byron? Ayla closed her eyes tightly and imagined the moments when this mark was carved into the pillar. A chubby girl leaning on a pillar measuring her height, her father riding on the pillar and her mother smiling happily as she watched the scene. Imagining such scenes strangely brought tears to her eyes, but Ayla held them back. Laura might find it strange. Maybe what really happened in this room was different from what he imagined. It was a long time ago, and I didn't remember. But there were also some clear facts. When these traces appeared, she and her parents were happy. And Byron destroyed that happiness. I can't forgive you. With her desire for revenge against Byron burning brightly once again, Ayla left her childhood room. As she left the room, Lester, who had been waiting impatiently, approached her. The room, did you see it well, miss? Yeah. Thanks for letting me see the room. It was really refreshing. A pleasant wrinkle formed at the corners of the butler's eyes as Ayla smiled and expressed her sincere gratitude. Let's go with this candidate, Director. No, Director. The candidate I recommended knows more than that candidate. Timor Republic, National Academy of Magic. Candace Epasher pressed her temples as if she had a headache. This was because the current professors, divided into factions, had been harassing her for days, each proposing their own recommended candidates for the vacant chair. Yes, everyone, please leave. I need time to think. But, Director, if you continue like this, I will take you out whenever I please. When Candace gritted her teeth and screamed with a fierce expression, the teachers had no choice but to leave the principal's office. Oh, yes. Thank goodness they fired the professors who were eating up the research funds, but hiring new ones is also a lot of work, honestly. He tousled his hair and vented his frustration. On a day like today, I just wanted to throw it all away and go back to some quiet rural town to farm. At that moment, a very welcome notification began to ring. It came from a communication port he had hidden in a drawer. Who is it? Bernie? Ophelia? Whoever it is, I hope it is interesting news. Candace quickly opened her desk drawer, her heart pounding. It was a call from Ophelia. Hi friend. What's happening? He activated the communication device with a cheerful expression and greeted me happily. But the face reflected in the communication port was not that of her friend Ophelia. It was a face very similar to his. It's me, Director. Ah. She thought it was her friend and made a big fuss when she received the call, but it turned out to be her friend's older brother. It would have been something that would have made anyone want to hide in a hole, but Candace shamelessly accepted Isidore's call as if nothing had happened. What brings you here, Dr. Haling? I thought you were Ophelia. Ah, if it's Ophelia. Here I am, Candy. Ophelia peeked behind Isidore's stern face. It seemed like the brothers were together. I'm contacting you because I have to ask you a favor. A favor? Does it have anything to do with Ayla? If so, I grant it to you. When Isidore opened his mouth in a stiff voice, Candace shrugged and smiled as if telling him to talk. Yeah. It has to do with that girl, but it may sound a little unlikely. He began to speak with a grim expression. So, you're asking me to look up Dr. Haling's records from when you were a first-year student at the academy. 30 years have passed. Yeah. If that guy is the one who cursed Ayla, shouldn't we catch him? This will make it easier to break the curse. At Isidore's words, Candace pouted and fell into thought. It wasn't that she was particularly dissatisfied, it was just a habit he had whenever he was deep in thought. His words were not wrong. If there was anything that could help break Ayla's curse, it was time to look for it. However, I wonder if there is any record of the incident that the academy covered up 30 years ago. After taking over management, there was no cover-up or minimization of the incident, none of that. He didn't like it. But before that, it was common. How many events disappeared without even leaving a record? But she couldn't give such a discouraging answer to her friend, who couldn't even sleep well worried about her daughter. I'll find out and call you. Ophelia, trust me. Candace hit her chest and screamed. The communication port cut to the scene of Ophelia waving her hand in thanks behind Isidore, who still maintained a stern expression. If there are no records, we should at least look for the teachers who worked at that time. Candace smiled, cracking her knuckles and neck. A foreign student from the Pelis Empire who quit 30 years ago. He vowed to find that record even if it meant turning the academy upside down.